Good afternoon, everyone. And my name is Omolola Adonlawo, and I will be hosting today's webinar on behalf of TEF-Health. First, I'd like to thank you all for joining us for this webinar, which is titled How TEF-Health Supports Trustworthy AI, where it's a very good opportunity to meet the expert for testing and validation of healthcare AI and robotic solutions. And now to set the stage, I would like to just mention, I think, something that we are all quite conversant is, which is the fact that healthcare AI adoption is continues to accelerate within healthcare. And of course, one of the biggest challenges for innovators and SMEs continues to be not just developing the AI solution, but actually understanding what it actually takes to move from clinically viable to move towards clinically viable and deployable products. Now, there are questions around testing, validation, certification, clinical readiness, and access to the right infrastructure, and these are becoming increasingly critical. And that is exactly what today's discussion is going to be focused on. Now, just to also important to note is that today's webinar also serves as a preview for our upcoming events that will be happening in Berlin, titled Transforming Healthcare with Trusted AI, Robotics and Data, which will be taking place on June 9th in Berlin. And we will share, of course, the registration link to this event in the chat. Now, we are also pleased to note that we also would also like to note that this event in Berlin is going to feature keynote contribution from Sila Reiner, who is the head of AI in health and life sciences at the European Commission, and also Severin Fisher. And so circling back to what we are doing today, today's session, of course, in today's session, we also have notable speakers from across the healthcare AI and healthcare AI ecosystem. And within this panel, we of course have people who have expertise in AI validation, healthcare innovation, regulatory affairs, digital health, and real-world clinical deployment. Now, to begin, we first hear two presentations from two SMEs regarding their validation journey, Medime and Seed. And following that, we would have a presentation from Petra Rita, who is the TEF-Health coordinator. And after that, we'll move on to the panel discussion. Now, to set the stage, I will hand over to Dr. Philip Byrne from Medime and Matthias Fellinger to present their presentation regarding their validation journey.
Yeah, hello. My name is Philip Borm. Just let me share the presentation here. So are we able to see this now? Wonderful.
Yes.
Okay, so we are Medimir Systems. We are a small German medtech company. We have a CE marked MDR Class 2A clinical decision support system, and we are already TÜV Süd certified. This is our notified body. We are based in Munich and founded out of a 30-year-old medical publishing company. So we reach our clients through our affiliation of this publishing company, Böhm-Buchmeier. We reach around 800,000 physicians. We have partnerships with 20 plus medical societies, European Association of Urology, American Heart Association, and so on. And until now, we used to produce our clinical decision support tools. They take physicians step by step through a treatment process. This is all guideline based. And we used to produce them manually, an artisan job, one tool at a time. And now, of course, we try to automate that, to make it faster. So we are building an AI-assisted clinical knowledge engineering factory to industrialize this automation, scale, throughput, higher throughput. And for that, we need an extension of our CE certificate or even a new certificate. So our CDS system is clinical decision support system is basically deterministic, that is certified. And now we built an AI factory that is in the making. And that's a little bit the story that I want to share now in the next 3-4 minutes. So we had in 2019, we had 3 TÜV Süd auditors at our development facility in India, Pune, and we had prepared it really until the last minute, no sleep, nothing. And we received our CE certificate then, but really barely. So we were at that point still testing manually, 3 devices, 3 operating systems, click by click, very long process. Lots of people needed to work in this. And then the lead auditor at that certification event told us the way you test your software has no future. That is, you cannot scale this, not under MDR and not under what was coming. So the software that we had built was good, but it was not built to be tested. Our validation was just bolted on the outside, not constructed in the inside, and that was a big mistake. So what followed was a complete rebuild. We had to rewrite the complete software. We took that decision, programmed our app in Flutter, clean architecture, everything testable, everything. And out of that, we derived a number of rules, and I want to share four of these rules. So rule number one is write a master document first and then keep writing. So documents are the truth, not memory, not conversation. If it's not in a document, we say it doesn't even exist. So rule number two is build for testability, or you will build twice. So the first time is the lesson, the second time is the rebuild. And our India happening with TÜV auditors is where we learned that. Rule number three is the shortcut is the slowest path. Every shortcut we ever took, we had to pay back later with interest, no exceptions. So don't take any shortcuts. And rule number four is human in the loop. At every consequence boundary, AI accelerates, humans authorize. Whenever a decision can affect the patient, a human says yes. And this is, of course, European Union AI Act at its core, and we figured that out, of course, ourselves in the difficult, the heavy way. So these are not only four rules, but they are connected in a sequence. Sequence is law. There is no market without trust. There is no trust without validation. There is no validation without the underlying requirements. You need to have them. And there are no requirements without a master document that unifies them all somewhere. And there are no shortcuts. These were the lessons that we learned. And I think what this means for you and where to find help. We were kind of lucky to have this auditor who shared ideas, the idea with us that was not the future, how we did it at that time. Most small businesses wouldn't have that. They have to find it out the hard way. But now we have this kind of an external validation infrastructure out there. And this is TEF-Health, for example. It's TÜV AI Labs. It's the sandbox environments. And this is what makes these rules that are just trying to point out affordable before a painful rebuild. It's not a substitute for the discipline, but it's a way to learn without paying the full price. And that is what TEF-Health actually does. And now in a few days or in June, they are opening up their kitchen in Berlin, and we can see what kind of toys they have there and check them. I'm excited myself because I've never seen that what they actually really do, but I'm very excited to participate there, and I think we should all take a look there. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Philip. So we will hand over now to Matthias, who would also be presenting regarding seed.
Yes, thanks. I'm trying to share my screen. Wait a second. Now I hope that in a second you see my screen over here. Do you see my presentation?
Yeah, we do.
Great. So hello everyone, thanks a lot. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to briefly introduce SEED and our post-market clinical follow-up study project that we have together with Philips and that we have implemented at Charité. The services I will be talking about are available on the TEF-Health platform as well as over our website. So if there is any question, please don't hesitate to contact us.
Matthias, it's not the full presentation mode, just for your information.
Wait a second. Yeah, thanks a lot. There's always so now.
Now it is.
I have the problem. I don't see my notes now. That's always what I'm struggling with. I will try without my notes. I hope I am fast enough with that. So you have a few words about secondary data use. So you have the objective. We need to access real-world data. All of you know of the value of that, because everybody needs data and more data to validate, for example, AI. And so there's a big question of secondary use of routine hospital data. And we need to provide clinically meaningful data sets, as well as take care of governance compliant implementation of such projects. So challenges, we have data governance complexity here, as well as, I need to say, diverse clinical, technical, and regulatory stakeholders in even one hospital, not only if you look at bigger projects with several hospitals, but already when you only have one hospital like Charité. So one point where we could provide support is by coordination of the stakeholders and activities needed to implement such a project by SEED. And we would actively support your project with such services. So just a few words about PMCF if you're not familiar with it. Post-market clinical follow-up, that's the abbreviation PMCF, is a continuous process requested by MDR for manufacturers of medical devices. So they need to collect data on the daily use of their devices as soon as they are marketed, in order to provide data about the acceptability of the benefit-risk ratio of their products. They need to check continuously about device safety and performance, previously unknown side effects, and so on, to prove that their product is safe and efficient over the time, not only at the start when they receive CE marking. And that's where we, with our secondary data use, come into play, because, you know, the hospital uses lots of products, medical devices, and in this case, Philips is the sponsor of that clinical study that focuses on the Philips IntelliVue family patient monitors. You see here one example that's, I think, the biggest of the patient monitors that they provide. This study on those patient monitors was conducted by Annerike Flint and her team, belonging to Professor Felix Balzer, Institute of Medical Informatics of Charité. Warm regards at this place here. The PMCF study that we are conducting has 3 arms. So in arms 1 and 2, we provide here data retrospectively. So we are using here real-world data achieved from the health data platform of Charité, from daily routine use of those monitors. In arm 1, we are focusing on the user environment, user groups, patient types and groups, and high-level treatment scopes. So you see, we are comparing here what actually is being done in the clinics with the monitors, comparing it to what the manufacturer intended at first when they produced that device. And in arm 2, we are more focusing on the alarm management with those devices. You know, those devices are intended to be used, for example, in the intensive care units to check whether the patient is well or not, providing data like ECG, blood pressure, and so on. And if one of the values goes out of the boundaries, there goes an alarm off. And this alarm management is a crucial question. How is it handled? How is it being used and such? And whether there are being made mistakes by the users, or whether the software is faulty, for example. All those questions you can look into by checking that real-world data. And that's what we are doing in this arm 2 here. Arm 3 is a bit more simple. There is just a user survey that we are handing out to the employees of Charité, looking at the technical device performance of those devices. So our role at SEED was project management for that project with those 3 study arms, and we provided contract management support as well as data privacy processes support. We did the ethics submissions, and I'm very happy that the last arm 3, was lately approved by ethics committee. So we got the approval for our complete study now altogether. And we manage all the internal approval processes of Charité, all the documentation, everything that is connected with that study. Yeah, that's all that I think I should discuss with you, and not to run out of time too much, right? So if there's any interest in our services, I will be happy to answer questions. Thanks a lot for the moment.
Yeah, thanks, Matthias. And now we'll just hand it over to Petra Rita, TEF-Health coordinator.
Okay, hello everyone. Can you see my screen? Yes, okay, thanks, Anne-Laure. Yeah, it's a pleasure to see you here at the webinar and to present the European Testing and Experimentation Facility for Health, AI and Robotics, short TEF-Health. As you probably all know, the AI Act came in force in 2024, and the AI Act also came up with a new concept of so-called testing and experimentation facilities, short TEFs, that support the actual testing and validation of products, AI products, before they go potentially to CE certification and to the market. And in the sector healthcare, this is the Testing and Experimentation Facility for Health, AI and Robotics. It is a consortium that comprises 52 leading reference facilities, as you can see here on the right side, from 9 member states. It is funded for the initial 5 years with 60 million euros and becomes a sustainable European infrastructure past 2027. So what you see here now on the right side is a so-called AI innovation cycle. We see the different development phases, and we also see 4 different tracks, the technology track, regulatory track, market business development, and clinical validation track. And each of these boxes comprise milestones that need to get achieved in order to bring a product to the market. And TEF-Health supports companies reaching the different milestones. And for this, we have developed an infrastructure, a digital marketplace infrastructure that brings together testing and validation service providers with the AI providers. Presently, if you go to our website, tefhealth.eu, you will find about 355 public service offerings, all equipped with detailed information, prices, and also information about possible discounts companies can receive. The service offerings come from 32 service providers and 8 member states. And they comprise different categories of services, including technical testing, clinical testing, regulatory support, data access, and bioanalysis. The user journey for companies is very simple. So after getting an orientation on the website, they can create an account under tefhealth.eu, then select their preferred services or services of interest. Then they can choose whether they want to pay the full price or get subsidized services for free or with discounts. And after this, the matchmaking phase starts. When the perfect matches have been identified, service agreements are concluded and the service is provided. Presently, we have 3 open calls that are funded with state aid. First call provides access to services, testing validation services from Portugal. Then the second call provides a multitude of services from 6 member states across Europe. And the third open call provides access to health data from the national French health system. If you're interested to learn more about examples or use cases, success stories that show how TEF-Health can support companies, you can go to this website. This is actually the website of the 4 existing TEFs in Europe. There are 3 other ones in the field of manufacturing, agriculture, and smart cities. And there you will find a multitude of success stories. I will share the link in a moment. Finally, it has been mentioned already, we have a public event in Berlin taking place on June 9th. The registration is open. There we will exhibit all the services. We will meet representatives from the AI office and the European Commission, and also several government representatives from the member states, to discuss the challenges and to also discuss possible streamlining and changes in the certification process for medical devices. Thank you.
Thanks, Petra. Now we're going to move on to our panel discussion, which would be moderated by Anna-Laura Kaji. So I will just hand it over to Anna-Laura. The floor is yours, Anna-Laura.
Thank you very much, Lola. So the panel discussion will take place during approximately a little over 30 minutes. And during this discussion, we'll touch upon 3 topics. The first topic is data infrastructure requirements. The second is moving on to testing and validation in practice, and then requirements for certification. So a little bit miming the journey. And I have to say that I very much liked Philip's remark about TEF-Health Kitchen, kinds of bring the pressure down. And for each of these 3 topics, I'll have 2 questions, and maybe I'll shoot the 2 at once so that then each panelist have the time to answer and bring his perspective, if this is okay with everyone. So moving on right away to data infrastructure requirements. So, based on the journey we just saw, notably the one described by Philips, in what way data and infrastructure are the real first barrier when moving towards validation? So that's, and identifying what the barriers are when it comes to data and infrastructure. And then related to this in a way, how do you define the readiness? When do you know it's time that you're ready for validation? And maybe I'll bring first in the discussion Emmanuel Bidot, because we haven't heard from Harlequin AI yet, and then maybe Philip can react, and then we'll move with Professor Escoffier to have the technical expertise, and then Petra can kick in with how TEF-Health addresses these issues. So yes, Emmanuel, please, how would you address these 2 first questions?
Thank you so much
on
for
data?
Yes, thank you, Anna, for the question. And just to give you a little bit of background and maybe introduce shortly actually Harlequin and what we do. We are an AI company in deep tech, and we do data analytic platforms. Not necessarily like in the health industry actually or environment, but what we discussed was interesting because the barrier and challenges actually we faced could be applied and could be a great palette actually with what is being actually seeked for and what is being faced in the industry. So what we do at Harlequin is we use unsupervised AI to cover the entire data set for people and industries that are dealing with sensitive data and large data sets, which leads to the first part of the answer is your data set is always something where you look for veracity. And this is one of the key elements right now that we're always looking. So are my data actually convenient enough? Are they actually filling up actually everything that I need? So is it complete basically? And can I trust it? But what we face at Harlequin, and because we work with ministries, governments to analyze like large data set for them. And what we face there is more than this. It was like, is the data reliable? Is it representative? But more of this is how can I exploit my data set and how can I be sure that the data set can be transparent, auditable, and I can be sure that the analysis actually was made on 100% of the data set. And this is something right now actually with the technology of unsupervised AI that we are using allows us to not only like analyze like a sample of this data set, but to analyze like the overview and the entirety of the data set. That's one point. Second point is For example, like we help a lot of governments, and especially in the counterterrorism department. So anything related to justice. And whenever it comes to this, it means like whenever there's an analysis of a data set, anything needs to be justified, anything needs to be reliable, anything needs to be auditable, and anything needs to be transparent. So what we build up actually is a tool that whenever there's an analysis and a use of data, it's always linked directly to the source, and you always have an access to the raw data set actually. So you can always justify your analysis, you can always justify what you're trying to prove there.
Thanks, Emmanuel. And Philip, how does this relate to your company and what you explained about the tool that was developed by Medemir?
You're muted, Philip.
I'm sorry. So first of all, I would really like to point out again that the first thing that is really important. It's not even data or infrastructure. It's knowing what you try to validate. Yeah. So you really have to know the question. You have to have it written down clearly enough to be able to ask the questions. There's no way around it. So the barrier is, I think for us, it was like more internal than external. Yeah. So but then when you have when you know that, of course, it's more so it's more documentation rather than technology. And about the validation itself, of course, you have to then defend your outputs in front of the notified body, and that is of course not so easy. They have their very specific ways of looking into things. It's always about evidence, show what you've done, and so you need to describe everything in writing, what your device or your product should do, and of course also what not. And for that again, you must rely on very good requirements, documents that you have out there. Of course, it is then again a lot of infrastructure that you have to build. And so if you want to unit test something, it's not only about your software that you produce, but also software that does the unit test. It's infrastructure, and that's something that you need to set up. And the same applies if you run like we do it now. We set up this AI factory, which is a lot of steps, runs, and for each of those pipeline steps, again, you need requirements. You need to have a work instruction. You need to write the prompts, and you need to have like a schema that you fill up that is testable, validatable, and so that is of course then the next thing, but grounded on very good requirements. Yeah.
Thank you, Philip. And actually, building on the requirement question, could I maybe hear you, Professor Escoffier, on, I mean, Philip just mentioned the importance of documentation, but what would be, technical and data requirements when you're heading towards validation, if I can ask you this?
Yes, absolutely. You can ask me anything. The question is whether I can answer, but thank you for inviting me to the call and to the stage. I have to admit, I have to say it depends, because of course not every project is alike. What we do is that we make together with you an in-depth analysis of requirements, of data needed, of validation strategies, and this is of course fine-tuned to the project. I can't give you specifics of things that we've already done because they are in collaboration with concrete companies and startups. But one thing that we did was with, just so that you can imagine it, 3 different researchers from my team. They went into a workshop with the client that we had, analyzed existing data sets, both from internal as well as from external provenance, and then came up with a implementation strategy for the very project or problem that the client had. So that's typical kickoff, and then there is of course an implementation phase depending on what exactly you want to conduct. I hope this is helpful, but yeah, please
Yes,
ask me
thank
if
you.
there's any particular thing that you would like to know.
Thank you. Yeah, for this first stage, then maybe moving on, and Petra, could you please then explain how TEF-Health can address this question of data and infrastructure potential barriers?
Yeah, thanks, Anne-Laure. So as mentioned in my short presentation, we have, for instance, an open call that is fully dedicated to providing access to health data from the national French health system, which is very valuable. We have the opportunity to collaborate with the National Gateway to Health Data, the Health Data Hub in France for this purpose. But there are many other data services that can be discovered through Call 1 and Call 2 that are also open, which provide access not only to data from diverse hospitals across Europe, but also to secure processing environments where the data processing, data use can occur in compliance with GDPR. And I would like to mention that we are working with several future health data access bodies, and most member states, the final assignment officially has not yet been done. Not only to make sure that the technology is in place to provide access to health data for secondary use, but also to make sure that the requirements of the AI Act, as defined, for example, in Article 10 of the AI Act, can be fulfilled. And this means that it is not just about providing access to data, but also about certain metrics related to the quality of the data in order to make the data valuable and useful for AI training and validation.
Thank you very much, Petra. So now moving on to the testing and validation. I mean, what does it mean in practice? What does real validation from the perspective of SME involve beyond just the testing? And speaking of this, from your perspective or experiences you may have working with SMEs, either as SMEs yourself or working with SMEs, when do companies most often get validation wrong or do not take the right approach for this stage in their journey? I'll again give the floor to Emmanuel. Thanks.
Sorry, I got the last part of your question actually just bumped actually.
No problem. So yes, so just now, focusing on the issue of validation. Yes. What SMEs, what are the pitfalls in which SMEs may fall when they get to the stage, and what does it mean really in practice beyond just having done some testing?
I mean, I don't know if there's a correct answer actually to this, to be honest. But what I can tell you actually is what we verify. I mean, and especially like in regards to justice, and which I think is also like falling into an environment where any data actually is really the most. I mean, verifying your data is really the most important. I would say one thing is, right now, there's a lot of tools actually in AI that are producing like hallucination. I would say this from this angle, because I think that's one of the most important, is to be sure that you're not falling in that pitfall actually, so that everything and the whole analysis actually again is covered and the entire data set is covered. Of course, I would say also like, there's another aspect of it, and especially in justice also regarding like GDPR compliancy, which is also another actually aspect of it, which is really important, is to be sure that the data set you're using is really compliant actually on that side. But what we face most of the time when we're using and when we're trying to analyze actually this large data set and try to export actually the main essence of it, is really like to prove that there's no hallucination. And I think that would be my main point actually of it, so that you're sure that the line, or I would say the supply chain of data and the supply chain and the analysis on top are 100% actually verifiable and trustworthy.
Yeah, if I may add to that, very good point by Manuel is first of all, I think especially startups with all the multidimensional things that they have to do typically don't put enough value on what Petra just said on the necessity for being compliant with regulation requirements. So what we typically try to do is make the data already GDPR, AI Act, whatever EHDS compliant for the validation, which is a necessity that you have in a lot of AI-related healthcare projects. So we take care that the data is well documented, that it's reusable, that the AI algorithms that we use are testable. And what is, I think, also quite important is that startups oftentimes don't have the scientific validation perspective when they start. So oftentimes things are evaluated by a self-determined metric. And I think that especially in healthcare, when you talk to medical experts and people that you know are used to reading publications and such, it's a great value when your validation is also scientifically evaluated, aka published. So of course, with this scientific approach, we also take care that there is something that you can put on your website and that this is properly also scientifically documented.
Thank you, Bjorn. And Philip, I guess when you emphasized earlier that there was no shortcut, I guess that what just Bjorn and Emmanuel said does resonate with your experience. Maybe if you can give us a bit more info on this. You're muted.
Sorry, that question I didn't get.
I think the 3 points that I would like to point out about the pitfalls of this testing and validation. Number one is validation is not a phase that you enter after producing your product. Yeah, so it's a continuous process. Yeah, so I mean anybody who tried out an LLM, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years ago, everybody here in this room did a validation. Hey, how is that? What is the result? To my first question to ChatGPT does that make sense or so? Yeah, so you have to start validation continuously right from the very beginning. The second thing is you need to integrate your validation into your design choices, into the choices how you set up the product. We ended up with a product the first time 2019 that was not validatable. Yeah, so you have to set up the product from the beginning that you can test everything. Yeah, and if you don't do this, this is the biggest pitfall. You start again from scratch with at least with producing your product. And a very hard thing, that's my point number 3, is the traceability. We have set up a large document. We call that Clinical Knowledge Engineering 101. This is our big Bible. And I set that up, and then I figured out, well, wow, there are 1,000 requirements in there actually. Yeah. So how can I trace them? How can I trace one of the phases, one of the steps of our AI factory back to those requirements? How does that work? And it's a lot of work if you do that afterwards. And the famous traceability matrix, that's the one that we got just like half an hour before our first audit. We got that ready. So this traceability is like really important, and it's a pitfall. And you need to think about that from the very beginning. What is the requirement? What's the code? How do I test it? What's the risk management about it? And you need to have that already there. It used to be a big Excel sheet, and now it's something else, of course. But traceability matters. Back to the user when he sees a recommendation from us, where does it come from? Traceability, provenance, that's key. Yeah. Anne-Laure.
Yes, thank you, Philip. And then Petra, how would you say TEF-Health can help when we reach that stage, even though I did get Philip's point about the fact that this is not a stage, but rather a continuous process?
Yeah, and I fully agree here. So it's really important to design AI systems with AI trustworthiness by design and by default, similar to GDPR, by design and by default. So start really thinking from the very beginning, what are the requirements, as has been mentioned. Where does the TEF-Health help? So one big barrier that especially startups and smaller SMEs face is that in the healthcare sector, they need clinical validation for their product. And this means they need to be able to bring their product in clinical infrastructures and hospitals and work together, collaborate with clinical facilities, which is often a challenge for startups and SMEs. And here, TEF-Health can support getting access to hospitals, to clinical facilities for device or AI system testing.
Thank you very much. So now moving to the last point, getting closer to the certification moment. So what would be the biggest challenge SMEs face for that last step? And that what would be, according to you, the biggest misconception SMEs may have about certification or regulatory readiness? If we can start again with Emmanuel, and please feel free, as Bjorn did earlier, to jump in if you would like.
Yes, of course, and thank you, Anna. I think regarding certification, and there I don't want to go into a space actually that I don't know enough actually, or what I can tell you is based on what we do in the legal actually environment. I would say is that again the traceability actually is one thing and is really necessary. So to have the certification, I would say, to have a data set that is analyzed and proven actually to be right and then certified as such, we need that the whole chain is verifiable. And for me, this is really one key, and it's really verifiable from a different dimensions, which is like first the data set and the veracity of it. Second, the veracity of your analysis. Third, actually, the veracity of the legal regulatory space in which you go forward. And so all of this should be validated throughout all the process, actually, so you can be ready for.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Philip, could we have your point on that last stage? Going to certification.
Yeah, I think I have tried to point out a number of challenges already. But basically, I think the challenge for a small company, the biggest challenge is that it is a lot of documentation, traceability. It's a lot of risk management work, and I don't want to point out how much work that is. Let me phrase it in a positive way, maybe, because we have seen now with these LLMs, it's so much easier. It's so much easier. Yeah, even to prepare or doing the follow up on a real audit, it's so much faster. You can discuss things. They are so fantastic consultants out there. So it is a huge challenge, but everything is much easier today with Claude and so on. And maybe about the misconception. It's a continuous process. So it's not like a big wedding. It's a big day, and it's like a wedding, and then you celebrate and party, and then you're all set, and they come back after a year. No, it's again it's like vor dem Spiel ist nach dem Spiel. So it's about like after the match. It's again before the match, and you have to prepare. You have to be ready for the next thing. So it's the misconception lies there that it's a 1 or 2 time event. They have unannounced audits that hit us last year. Yeah, they were just ringing at the door, and we had to have our stuff ready. And we have just been audited by Regierung von Oberbayern. This is like the government also does audits nowadays, which is good. So you have to be ready all the time, improve things, and so that's maybe a little bit of a misconception. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, Philip. And Bjorn, how, from a technical point of view, how can you be ready all the time? What do you need to do, technically to make sure that you can follow up on these certification requirements?
Well, we are as ready as we can be, but you're completely right. The requirements change all the time. What I find a great help is to use also AI for help with the certification, because if you use those tools correctly, you can ask for what are the current changes in regulation, in requirements for certification. And typically, I mean, you have to check for hallucinations and the typical things that you have to do with AI agents, but they're a great help when used correctly together with a concrete project problem in certification. So we have now, in the meantime, quite a bit of experience with that. And I think that's a process that is well under control. And therefore, as I said, we are as ready as we can be, but it's not always easy.
Thank you, Bjorn. And maybe Petra, if you can, I have an idea of what you're going to say, but can you how TEF-Health can help when it comes to certification?
Yeah, I would like to open up maybe another topic that we have not touched upon so much, but this is also a very relevant part of the work of TEF-Health, which is the development of actual standards and also norms for measuring AI trustworthiness. And since we are in the healthcare sector, what is also missing are standards for health impact assessment. Yeah, and this is another topic where we need to do work. This is often not directly a service to a company, but nevertheless work that needs to be done. It's also a lot of work together with policymakers. We work together with the OECD, for example, to make sure that in the future we can really compare the impact of AI systems on the health of patients.
Thank you very much. So I'll do a bit of a hard exercise right now and do kind of try to summarize some of the key takeaway before I will ask each one of you for a last piece of advice to SMEs. So not necessarily in a chronological order, but some of the key points that I think you all have mentioned for SMEs was first, the point that there was no shortcuts. The fact that you have to be in a position where you can not only question the quality of your data set, but be in a position where you can exploit all of your data set in your entirety and link it to its sources to avoid the pitfall of hallucination. The importance is not only technical, but is also documentation. Do not underestimate compliance with regulation and have it in mind from the start, may it be GDPR or other compliance that you'll have to have. Also, the scientific perspective of the work you undertake to make sure that there is the added value where it will be deployed. And this should be from the start. The fact that you should not, even though we have in this webinar done these 3 steps, not to think of it as 3 steps, but really to think of it as a continuous process. And even though you should rejoice when you get a green light, you should know that this may turn red again. And in order to maybe prevent this from happening, always be aware of the question of traceability. Again, linked to this, a lot of documentation, but to be on a positive note, so that, because the most important is that SME do continuous to try to develop these solutions to improve healthcare, is the fact that it used to be a bit more, difficult in the past, and now we have AI tools such as LLM, and these can be helpful. This was mentioned by both speakers. So not only AI as a medical device, but AI as a tool in helping developing this device and keeping up with all the documentation. As we have seen, TEF-Health has, among its 350 some services that it offers, services that are particularly triggered or relevant for the different challenges that we have described here, and the fact that it's also, as Petra has just mentioned, also working on the not only for SMEs but also for notified bodies, helping them getting the right knowledge and expertise to make sure that certificate validation and certification process can be as agile and as relevant and reliable as possible. And with this, I'll just ask each speaker, maybe starting again with Emmanuel, if you can give me, what would be your piece of advice for SMEs starting their validation journey of an AI robotic solution in healthcare?
Thank you, Anna, for leaving me the floor. I think there's a couple of things actually that has been said, and of course these are interesting time, I would say, for a couple of reasons. The first one is, of course, like the technology now is so fast in development actually that it supports actually anything that used to be longer, that used to be hard actually to manage, into a really easy process. So this is, I think, wonderful, and all the SMEs should use it, because tomorrow we will need to use all of these AI tools. For me, the most important in what we say is be sure of what you are analyzing, be sure of the conclusion of your analysis, use all the tools that are necessary to go faster, and so to be agile and stay agile actually associated to that. But be sure that if there's a mistake in the process, that could be detrimental. So be sure of validating and being transparent on each step of the way.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Philip?
Yeah, I would just like to point out again as key takeaways, start with writing down what you know, generate clarity about what you do, what you want to do, write your master document on day one. You will rewrite everything 100 times, but start with that. That's number one. And number two, get external eyes on it, yeah, and so get as much external validation onto your device as you can, as cheap as possible. And I think TEF-Health is a great opportunity here. So my key takeaway advice is just get to this conference in June. Thanks.
Björn?
Yeah, I think a lot has been said already. I can only echo that it's important to embrace, might sound weird, regulation from the very beginning. Don't see regulation as your enemy. See it as your moat that protects your nice environment from others to enter it easily. And in that sense, do take necessary steps for AI in health as early as possible, because it's bringing you a competitive advantage. And if you don't know how, TEF-Health is out there to help you. We like to partner with you, and we are happy to do this together.
Thank you, Björn. And maybe Petra?
Yeah, I only can rephrase what has been said already. I choose the phrase, there's no free lunch. So TEF-Health can help to skill up the people of your company, to make them capable to go the necessary, sometimes long path at its full length, and to successfully navigate the AI life cycle towards market access. And also what Philip said, of course, we would be happy to greet you at the Berlin event on June 9th, where we can provide much more insights into our kitchen.
And to continue on the kitchen metaphor, this webinar was only a taste of what you can get. If you want to have a glimpse at the full menu, we hope to be able to meet you in Berlin. Back to you, Lola.
Thanks a lot, Petra, and Björn, Philip, and Laura, Emmanuel. Special thanks also Laura for moderating the panel. Very insightful, and a lot of food metaphors kind of getting me hungry. But yeah, thank you all. And we will now have a round of questions. And I did see there was a question in the chat earlier, and which has already been answered by Petra. Petra, would you still like to add anything to your response that you gave to that question? And also, if you have any question outside of this question that was asked by Mawa, kindly put the question in the chat, and we will be happy to answer you.
Yeah, maybe I can just summarize what has been asked. So there was a question if all the 3 calls are presently open. This is the case. The timelines are very similar. The only additional step for the subsidized service provision is that because the services are subsidized with state aid, the companies need to show their eligibility to obtain the state aid, and they have to provide applications with all the material and documents that is needed for that purpose. Whether one can filter subsidized from non-subsidized services is the case. So this should be easily addressable with the platform. And last question was about the competition. Presently, actually, we noted that there are not so many companies with AI products at a stage where they already consider validation and testing and certification. So we are always happy to meet more companies. What the challenging part is sometimes is finding the true match. Yeah, just think about, for example, specific data are being needed from a hospital for validation. Then, of course, we need to see if the hospitals that presently provide their services or the other data access bodies have actually these data. And this is the limiting factor. But we have a very powerful front office at TEF-Health that provides individual support to identify the perfect match. And yeah, we look forward to your applications, or also use, please, the help desk if you have any further questions.
Great, perfect. Thank you, Petra. So I've put in the chat also the link to the open calls and also the link to the help desk that has been mentioned by Petra. And so if there are no more questions, I believe we can we can gradually round it up. And I think my closing remark on this webinar would be, of course, to see you all in Berlin. And also notably, if when you come to Berlin during our event in Berlin, there will be exhibition of the TEF-Health services where you will be able to meet different service providers from TEF-Health across the 9 represented countries in the project. So yeah, we look forward to see you all in Berlin on June 9th. And so this is not goodbye. I guess this would be see you later. Have a nice afternoon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.